Okay, all right. We're having some lovely yearbook memories. Anyways, hi folks. It's Friday. There's a lot of banging that's going to be in the background, and that's largely because the neighbors upstairs are going crazy. Like, I'm going to complain to the landlord. I don't have a landlord. Um, we're getting our roof done. So it's very loud. Um, I'm streaming a little bit earlier than I normally do today, and it's largely because of the fact that Corbin's got a doctor's appointment where he's going to go and get checked up, and they're going to tell us that he's a little bit heavy. A little bit heavy. He's been there's been a battle of the food going on in our house since we got Lucy. So I think our boy has been overindulging a bit. I know Lucy eats like a tank, but she's a growing little girl. So All right. So on the screen right now, I've got a picture of today's page, which is what we did yesterday. Now I've got the originals that I can show. Let's get my big noggin out of the way. There we go. So here's our page with the text on it. Here's our little yearbook memories, the little stories of these characters. Now, I scanned all of the images, and including the palettes and stuff like that. So here is those very images that we're talking about, and that you can see up close and get a little more of the details, because I think a lot of it's lost by, the reducing of the size of the image. A lot of the information gets lost. There's a lot of fun to, how much you can see all the little details and things. So this is the one of the two that I did yesterday afternoon. That was me. Okay, I'm just checking. Sorry. And then there's the final one from last night as well. So I wanted to experiment with the palettes. And really see the differences from one to the next. So that's what we were up to there. So now we're at the point where we've got the four panels done. I'll show you the originals here. I cut them down a little bit here so that you can see. So this is the two. Well, that's upside down. So this is the two palettes. This is the white added to these values, and so the different letter values that you can get from that. The challenge is, of course, that it's on a wooden board, so it makes it a little bit harder to see. And these are the darker values that we have here. So it's black added to each of these different colors we have here. So, and I didn't do the gray tones because, I think you get it. You get the gray tones. They're pretty straightforward. So using this limited palette, and there's the white, raw sienna or yellow ochre for the yellow, a burnt sienna for like a red, a sap green, forest, or some sort of dark green that has a degree of blue in it, which all greens do, but you know what I mean. Straight on black, and burnt umber, like a Windsor blue or a Prussian blue or an ultramarine blue, again, some kind of deep blue. So you can transfer different colors into these that are reminiscent of the ones that you see. Sometimes there's omissions where people will only use those. No burnt umber, sometimes people will take out the green and use the blue instead. There's a number of different palettes. This is the palette I've discovered videos that are out there, and they're all ostensibly the same thing. And this is a sort of limited palette that they used during the Renaissance period, Middle Ages, sort of things like that. And the most expensive color there was the blue. So blue was saved for certain things like, the royal gowns and things like that. But for the most part, you'd see these are the basic colors. Many of them were used as glazes, And whatever the most accessible and affordable color that was local, oftentimes, if it's like an umber or just the straight on black and white, or maybe the sienna, oftentimes they do the entire composition and then they would paint the whole thing in grayscale, basically, or like, one uniform color scale. And then they would glaze the rest of the colors in there. So, interesting stuff. So this is some of the images that we did, and these are on board. Just grab some board out of the storage closet here in the studio, and then we tried to do different skin tones, and so yeah, they're not even the same size. It's literally just whatever I felt like doing in the moment. Now I have since tried to mark a uniform size the remainder of the lengths of board that I have, so that if I'm going to do things, try to keep them to the same size, because it's easier to, if you're going to do anything with them, that there's a uniformity to the scale. So these could also be cut down, but this one would be more difficult because it's a bit larger. Anyways, so that's what we did yesterday. So that's some of the different approaches to painting faces with the limited palette that I showed you, and how some people will see a palette and go, well, that only serves this kind of face, and it doesn't. We should be able to sit down and take the time to figure out the differences in the complexion of all these different kinds of people. She's much, much lighter skinned than this person here. Again, even than this person. So I'm just trying to capture, if different ethnicities, different colors, different approaches to things. So yeah, that's what we did yesterday. Now I can do more of that if it's beneficial to people, or I could just keep on keeping on. But yeah, that's some of what we got up to there. And I'm gonna take some layers off here because I've been going. I dropped off the first piece, the mountain painting that I've been showing. And let me see if I've got this other, if it'll show up on screen. I don't know if it will or not, but okay, great. Sorry, I'm just dealing with something here for a sec. Let's see, here we go. So this is it going to be too bright? You can try to cut the light down on it. Let's see if that makes it easier to see. So this is the next image that I'm doing. And this is pretty big. It's 2.5 by 3.5 as far as it goes for feet. And that's the forest piece that I'm doing for this office, and this is the mountain piece that I finished that's exhibited in the office now. So I hope they like it. I hope it makes everybody smile and happy. But yeah, there's the completed image. So there they go. I hope there's a whole thing about, it's not a, what do they call that, imposter syndrome thing, but there's always this lack of assurity sometimes that we have about, people say they think something's interesting, but you're never really sure if people are just being nice. Trying to get it in bigger there. So there you go. That's the two larger things that I've been doing, and I'm still finishing off. So okay. All right, so we've got paper. We've got different surfaces that we can work on today. We've got suggestions from the book. But if it's of benefit to people, I can continue to do some painting stuff, to do some portrait work there. I actually enjoy it, painting like that. I really do. It's 12 now. We've got about an hour. So one of the things I could do, let's see what I've got. I've got this little scrap of a surface here, right? Just a little scrap piece of wood. And maybe what we can do is play with this for a second here in the studio and try something different with a limited palette here. Now I've got some acrylic here. I'll just put some on this little palette, just a small amount here, because we're going to play around. I'm going to use just a couple of random colors, and why I say that is just choosing some random colors in the moment makes me have to figure out a composition with those. And that limitation can produce that sort of experimental limitation can produce some interesting things. But you're not going to discover those interesting things unless you give it a go. So I'm going to pick one more value here. Yeah, okay. I got this crazy crimson. You know what? Let's use this orange. So I've got a blue, a tan, and an orange color. And so we'll see what we can figure out with these. Now, the reason that I do weird little things like this is to force growth, right? When we step outside of the sort of regular routine that we have of these are the things that I use and these are the ways that I do them, it's important to always try to reach out and try something that you don't normally get to. And in that way, it encourages you to come up with something new. It encourages you to figure out an approach and to figure out a style that you may not have thought was accessible to you, but you never really tried it. So we're going to do a crazy, how about we do a crazy sci-fi city thing? Let's try something like that. So I've got 3 colors, okay? We've got this little random unprimed piece of broken board, and I can trim this part off so we have at least a relatively flat shaped thing. Okay, so I've got, so there's our 3 little values here. I'm just trying to see what's the deepest color we can make with it. All right, well, that's our darkest color. So let's play. Now I'm just going to chop in colors into the space. I'm not overly concerned. I've got a whole bunch of random thumbnails of Sci-Fi City. That's it. That's the whole search. Because, and I'm not looking too closely at things. It's because they just, it's a future city. It's not a real place. It's not a real thing. So it's largely up to us to sort of figure out, what would a city look like in said future, right? Right. So I'm coming in with these darker volumes, cutting in some shapes, and just picking and choosing around the composition, placement of some values. Now, one of the things I'm thinking of is, I'm going to show you something really, I don't know that people overly think about this or not, but if you put lines across here, okay, and then we consider lines across there. So where is the central focus of the image? And one of the ways to find that is to look at dividing this up into thirds, into ostensibly 9 segments. And in doing so, you recognize that the eye is drawn to this central area. And so if that's the case, whatever it is that we're going to do for our focus needs to come from there. So I'm going to put, I want to imply the space is larger than it is. So one of the ways I can do that is by having elements go off screen. And then what I'm also doing is being a little sneaky here. The divisional line I just put in there to show you the thirds, I'm utilizing that for one of the directions of the train, the tramway, or I guess whatever it would be called. I'm having it join in there along that axis point, but I'm also having it end at another axis point. It's a sneaky little way to sort of say, hey, hey, you know, look in here, look down in this, you know, it just sort of controls where our attention goes and how we look at the objects in the space. Now, the other thing that I want to do is to balance out some of this values. So if I do some buildings down here, okay, that run along this line, so it's almost like a continuation of this line throughout, then that should carry the eye around so that you see this as interconnected. So that's hungry, hungry, hungry hippo here. This board is for moisture, so I got to keep wetting the brush a fair amount. Hi Liz, welcome aboard. Did you like today's page? Today's page is based on something that made Liz laugh. Yearbook memories. So just throwing in some of these values, these colors. It doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be exact. Let me move this so you can see, look there. There we go. But I'm going to try something here as well in our foreground. But my intention is to draw interest to these points that I showed you, right? Right. So just cutting in these shapes for the city itself. Sci-fi city. And we'll work this into our next story. I tried to look. It says, oh, wow. It's up on Instagram and Facebook. Whoops. And yeah, hopefully you'll be able to find it okay. I pulled the cord. I pulled the cord. There we go. So here's some of that. Now I'm going to go back in here to our limited 3 color palette, and I'm going to load up far more orange on the brush and start inserting that into some of these buildings very purposely. And we'll get into why in a second, but what I'm going to try to do is, using the orange in the mix a little more aggressively, is to try to wash out the values so we can insert, you know, like lights coming up from down below in our city here. So we might as well start that now by inserting orange into the colors for these dark, ominous buildings rising up from the din, you know. There we go. Look at that, quick and dirty. So here's our good start. So we've got some of these elements coming together from our limited palette. Let's try just the orange in and of itself and see how well that's going to show up. It's not very opaque, eh? Not a very opaque value. This paint is not producing for us, so that's all right. We'll work with it. We'll work with it. We'll make it our friend. This brushes. I had a rougher day. But my plan is to have this luminous value coming up from underneath. So I'm going to switch brushes in a minute, because I think I've just snapped the bristles on the head of this guy. But we've got a whole bunch of things done with him, so he has served us well. We'll send him off to the promised land. So now I've got a 6. This is a 6, this one. Oh, I've seen it. Still learning this phone to enlarge and read. Oh, nice. Fancy new phone. So we've got, I'm taking this tan color. We're not using white right now. We're using this tan. And just because these are the 3 random colors that I picked. And I'm going to come in and start putting those in with this. I'm still using a thick and gobby brush. That's okay. We'll get a little tighter as we go here. So I'm using my finger to flick the value up. I think that's a song by the Cars. Flick it up. No, wait, no, that's not right. Is that the one where he goes, but you can't get going until the sun is down? I'm probably going to cut this part off, who cares, but that's all right. We're going to still work on it. So I'm trying to get the idea across that a lot of the lights, the city lights, are coming from down below. And our first application is pretty rough. We'll tighten things up. Lots of little details and things over time. But just to begin things off. Get some of these marks in here. Making sure I'm not missing nothing. All right. Hope everybody's had a good week. It's been a long week, hasn't it? Why, Chris, it sure has. This week has been so long. How long was it? It's so long. When I started it, I was still riding my dinosaur. What? Come on, make some sense. Okay. So I'm throwing some of that value back in between. It's a strange way to say it, but I call these the spaces in between whatever the landmarks are, whether they're buildings or whatever it is. I still describe them as canyons, even though, you know, I don't know that that's necessarily what you might think of when thinking of this in the context of a city. But yeah, canyons. That's what comes to mind. I took so many photos yesterday and drew out like 10 sketches. Surprising it has a little resemblance. Oh, fantastic. I'm glad you're having fun. It's important that you have some fun. Plug away, right? The reason I'm doing this little scene here instead of another portrait is just, you know, it's just something else to try for people. So I'm just using these 3 colors. It's a dark blue, an orange, and a tan color. It's actually called titanium white, but it's basically like a sandy tan color. You know, like all the cool kids are doing these days. So I'll add some more interesting buildings and things in the background as we go, but I just want to get a good start on what's in our foreground. Sorry, I'm moving the thing around. I don't have this, it's just leaning on the desk, so. Did you hear the TikTok Captain Hook story? Yes, Captain. Anyways. Yeah, you gotta watch out for that alligator. I'll bite your hand off, man. Well, that's why he's called Captain Hook. It's a great story element. It really is. The menacing tick-tock sound of an alligator. It's so ridiculously funny. Okay, so, and then I'll do something with our sky as well in a moment, but so we're starting to get a little more shape, starting to make a little more sense with our city here, our little sci-fi vista. There's a lot of, so something I've been noticing is there's a lot of posts that are going up these days of people showing, here's some things I've been working on. I'm like, and then I'm like, did you really paint that? That's, and I'll look at their Instagram page or whatever, and it's all AI generated. And there's just this part of me that just wants to contact the creator and go, you can do this, we can work on this painting stuff. But yeah, Okay, so here's our skyline. We'll add to that in a minute, but just getting some acrylic down on it's gonna make it a little less absorbent for all of the paint we're putting on here. There we go. So I'm going to add some pylons and things like that for the train track here. We'll get some of that in there, but we're going to do it much darker than it is. So, we got a good structure, good start. It's a pretty nondescript, but at the same time, you get a sense of that there's some form here, there's some structure here. We've got some kind of some city, some look. I love the whole story idea. The goofiest stories, a weird part of getting old is memories of stuff that comes back ridiculously clear. It's so true, right? And then sometimes it's like, oh, with those things, you're like, woulda, shoulda, coulda, huh? But it is nice to think about, the different experiences that we have in life as fodder for stories, I made references in the page today. The song from the 1980s. Somebody's yearbook photo says, Ricky, you're so fine, you blow my mind is his nickname. And I'm like, who would have a nickname that long? But the one girl she's got the same name as Tammy Wynette, and she just can't stand it. And that comes from knowing someone at the name of, I knew a guy I went to school with named Michael Bolton. And man, did he not like having that name at that time. A couple of years later, Michael Bolton starts to really kick off, and I'm like, hey, he goes, don't even say it. Like, he already heard it 1,000 times about Michael Bolton. So yeah, of all the people, my middle names are Michael Scott, Michael and Scott, and then of course when The Office takes off, it's like, you got the middle names of the main character, and he is a silly person, so that suits me. So okay, so I'm going to go down to a smaller thin brush. Okay, just a, if you're one of those, I need to know the number, it's a 2, it's a liner brush. So I'm going to come through here with this 2, all right, and I'm going to start to add some little elements here to tighten some of the things up within the composition, tighten up some of our lines. And at the same time, I don't want them to be, I want to blend things in a little bit, but I want to have some nice hard edges on stuff. And the reason I'm doing that is to, those clear silhouettes, those nice clear outlines are going to help convince the folks that these are real buildings. You know, if it's organic, make them really organic. If it's linear, you know, make them linear. But sloppy organic, sloppy linear is just confusing for the viewer. So yeah, so it's just hitting these little lines are going to tighten up some of the image. That's what I hope. Now I'll do the same thing with the darker value that we've come up with for our deep, using the orange and the blue together. Now we want to put in dark marks throughout our composition as well. So these two different factors together will start to make a little more clear for the viewer shapes of some of the buildings and how things are starting to come more clearly into focus. So we can do fun little exchanges like putting a tower on top of this thing or something like that, you know, just something small. And yet at the same time, it adds a little interesting shape. Yep. Am I missing stuff? Nope, we're good. I know it's a bit different, you know, this kind of imagery from what we were doing yesterday, but you got to try all the little bells and whistles. You got to try to mix and match all the different types of imagery and subject matter that we can in our little creative journey here. So here's our foreground building coming in. Let me see if I can zoom this in just a tiny bit more. Or is that about it? No, there we go. We got something there. Okay, so hopefully this is coming through a little more clearly now. So I'm trying to put in some more interesting and solid shapes into these little buildings. Adding a little more visual complexity. And then we're going to come through in a moment and start, in this area, we'll start adding lights into some of the buildings and the structures. And so we'll do some interesting things there. Not just light coming up from beneath, but lights within the building themselves. We're making our little sci-fi science fiction city. Orange sky background. Fun in the sun. So here's our tramway coming through now, tightening that up. Gives that a little bit more sense of weight by tightening up the lines on it. It was never, Your ride was perfect. I was riding my horse under apple trees. Horse gets spooks and takes off under low branches. Cheeks all bloody. Dad said, "Why not jump off?" Never the horse's fault. I fell off. That stuff happens. Yeah. Yep. Okay, so I'm not too concerned about getting all the little details down right now, but we'll just get some sort of logistical sense of the images together. But the idea again is to have these buildings rising up out of the light. There we go. Okay, we'll continue that. We'll work on that a little more in a minute. Is this making sense for folks? I hope it is. Don't steal green apples. I still love green Macintosh apples. It's funny. I eat red peppers like my wife eats apples. Like, I seriously, I eat peppers all the time. And I bite into them like I'm biting into an apple. It's really silly, but I just, enjoy the taste and the flavor of a green pepper. So I'm starting to put these lighter lines across our buildings here to start to, imply that there's lots of different levels and lots of different things going on. Now, the first lines that I'm coming across with is this lighter mix here, but we're going to come through and put a bunch of little pinches of more light into these, as though they're, there's somebody in this office or that apartment or whatever these buildings represent, right? So I'm just tightening my focus here on this one area, I think, right now for the moment. So there's where we start to get lights coming on in different apartments. So hopefully that's going to make it start to feel a little more like a proper building. Because this is all just symbolic language in the first place, right? These aren't really buildings. This is a painting of buildings. But, it's fun. Man, people use a lot of hydro on that floor. Okay. So I'm still on the same little thin brush here. But I'm going to start being a little cheeky with some of the lines around here. Yeah, just accentuating the shape. And then I'm going to lighten that line down into the mist on some of these. Just, that's it. Lines back and forth. Pulling things in and out of the misty, foggy, lit up area down below. So I'm going to push the values in the sky as well. I'm going to push those back, and we're going to have two luminous points. I want to have an intermediate sky and a bright sky up top. Sorry, I'm trying to keep track of the time because I have to take Corbin to an appointment today too. How many hours have I drawn in a day? How many hours am I in the studio daily? I would say 10 to 12. You know, kids are growing up, and you know, I don't sleep much. So yeah, keeps me out of trouble. That's why I work on so many things simultaneously as well. Is just because of my lack of sleeping, like, you know, normal people. And I've always been this way. Like I've always slept poorly. When they put me on the pills, different pills for the type 1 diabetes that I've only had for a couple of years now, I suddenly started sleeping more at night. So now I'll sleep about, 6 hours, which is ridiculous. I know, but, I know. So this is trying to get some of this light to come up from down below here. Shining up between the various buildings. Yeah. The canyons below. There's a beautiful thing about when you see pictures of major cities at night, and you see how it's really interesting to me. Like, you see the luminousness coming from deep down below, in the city streets where all the street lights are, and these dark monoliths and obelisks that are sticking out of it, these tall buildings. Because when you don't get in smaller cities like I live in, you don't get these skyscrapers like that are one up against the next and so forth. I mean, we're starting to become a larger city now, but London still thinks on a lot of levels that it's not quite the city it is. But you can see lots of development happening now. 30-story buildings. It's crazy. So here I am, just pushing the canyons there. Hi, Linda, welcome aboard. I've had insomnia all my life. Not working now, so it doesn't matter. Well, there you go. Being awake watching time pass without sleep again, knowing I have to be at work at 8 was a sick feeling. I understand that completely. Linda, Liz has been sketching like a madman. Which is great. So here's our little buildings coming through. There's an interesting artist that sort of paints like this. His name is Glenn Barr. And it's only when you work on a wood like this that you realize, oh, Glenn paints on wood. You can start to see it because of the way that the paint works, on the surface. There's certain things that materials give away about work. You look at a piece and you can tell the difference between an acrylic and an oil. Just the way that the value is applied. But there's also now all these little quick fixes that people make, like paint acrylic, but we'll put this oil glaze type thing over it so it looks like an oil painting now. It's like, it's kind of weird, man. You can still tell that the brush strokes aren't done in oil. You can still tell the difference. And then it says, that's awesome. To our good old Nancy. Yeah, I've always done stuff in the studio after the family's asleep. It is a great time for me to get some stuff done. But now that the kids are all grown up, well, I'm not limited to all that kind of a schedule, so I get far more work done. I've got a cat that also keeps me to schedule. As soon as I get out of bed, Corbin's waiting for me outside my door. Let's go, get in the studio. Come on, amuse me. But when he says it sounds like this. Meow, 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 meow. Took 50 photos of subjects to practice with. There you go. Many stories about straight people. There. Nice. Good. You got a subject matter there. You've got a bunch of material to work from. Story intent. You're on your way. So now it's starting to look a little more like a building. You know, and it's just the symbolic language of windows applied and the like. So now I'm putting in just some hits of color in here. Now implying all sorts of things going on down below. And it, you know, doesn't necessarily need to be too descriptive. Because scale-wise, we're working on a huge scale. But this starts to imply like street lights and business lights and things like that. As well as fitting some more windows in and things. And we got a little bit more going. Mix a little bit of light blue in here. Put some of those in. Change the lighting of the windows. Yeah, fun. I'm just getting it down. I'll work on the finer points much later. Right now, I'm just happy they aren't stickmen anymore. Oh, I'm so happy to hear that you're enjoying the process. It's the little things that we pick up along the way. You know, take the victory and, you know, focus on that. There are so many ways that we can talk ourselves out of things, or we can naysay ourselves to the point where, you know, we won't feel like we're pleased with what we're producing. Well, there's no time for that. Take the victories of the things that you're working on and enjoy it, move forward from there. Just silly little marks coming up through this space. Where are we at? Am I See Chris's post. Oh, yeah, I could show you right now if you want to see it. There's today's page. Make it a little bit bigger. Did that work? I think it did. Let's try it. There we are. Get my head out of the road. Here's today's page. We've got Richard, oh Ricky, you're so fine, you blow my mind, Rogers. It's just ridiculous. And Davis Jenkins, that might be my favorite one. I was looking for someone, I got to know them. They called them your mom after a while. Nice. Yeah, I'm just having my own little fun jokes and you know, whether or not anybody gets, you know, the whatever it is, the humor of the story that we're putting together, just enjoy yourself in the moment, you know. So that's what this page is today, is like. Silly idea. Let's have fun exploring it. So here's our quick dirty downtown Space City painting. And then we'll just put, so this is the 3-color palette we're using, is just these 3 random orange, blue, and tan color that we've put together. So fun. It's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah, so we've got our cakes and our snouts, and we're having a lot of fun today. Yeah, now you could go in and just hit little areas of color with, you know, a black or a white, but sort of sticking to this palette keeps it interesting. So, oh, I'm glad you like them. Let me get back to the painting stuff. Sorry, I forgot I had that on. You know. Okay, so here's our little cityscape that we've started. And it's coming together with just our little colors, and we're having a lot of fun. Just poking in little bits of information here and there. You can get a degree of complexity even in a small amount of space. It's just figuring out what the language is of it, right? Like how complex do I want things to be? You know, how much can I simplify? And those choices, you know, if you stick to those, then it sort of lets you come up with some sort of creative way of interpreting an environment that, you know, may well follow its own rules. But as long as it's understandable to the viewer that this is meant to represent a little city or something like that, then you're doing okay. Because that's where it counts. It's whether or not somebody else looks at it and goes, oh, okay, I get what's going on here. So I'm going to make a really weird little color here and start putting in some more bits of information, buildings, things like that, just to give a sense of depth, that we're not only limited to a flat foreground of buildings to choose from here, that it goes a little bit deeper than that here, the city. So some of these buildings in the foreground are, in behind others. And, with that in mind, some of those are in front of our tracks. So just to sort of cut up the image, make our city a little more busy. Anybody want to share what their most likely to be statement was? Oh my. So this is dark, but I never thought I'd make it to 30. I just sort of lived in the sense that, if I could, just living today, because I grew up in a rough spot and I didn't overly plan on where things were going. So I don't know about a most likely to statement, but I probably would have said something silly. I probably would have said most likely to find out that eating the peeling of the orange was a bad idea after all. Like just something silly. And yeah, I don't know. I never did fill out that sort of stuff for a yearbook. I never, I went to a really big school and I finished my last year in the art department, so I wasn't even in the main school. I was just in this little side building where the art classes were taught in high school. And so I didn't go over and do photos, and I didn't go over and all of that stuff. So I missed out on the yearbook. But the yearbooks that I took part in when I was younger, they were just flat out silly. Principal, when I was in grade 9, signed "to a lovely young lady." My yearbook. I think he thought I was a girl. Because at the time I think it was about 5'6" and really white hair and pretty fair, So I can understand it. That or he was a real practical joker. I've never really known which was which. So, to a lovely young lady. What? My friend thought that was just absolutely brilliant. He thought it was the funniest thing in the world that he wrote that in my book. He wrote to a nice young man in his, by the way, which is why I think he actually did think I was a girl. And then 16 came, and along with it came puberty and massive growth spurt. So there we go. So here's our little sci-fi city thing coming together there. There's some good silly fun. Where are we at? Yeah. Okay, well, we're at an hour, and I said I'm going to have to take my young fella here. I'm going to have to go wake him up across the room and take him to the vet this afternoon. Just going to go get a checkup. Corbin is 12 now. He's getting older. He's a big old boy now. But he's having a lot of fun since we got the kitten, since we got Lucy. Corbin is climbing and running, and oh boy, it's great. a little lease on life. You still can't anchor us though. So, okay, so here's our quick, dirty little sci-fi city. We just used orange, blue, and tan for this. So, I mean, having a limited little palette, you can still get a lot of information together. It really is simply a case of just taking the time and testing things out as you go through and finding those little combinations of color and little mixes of color that, like, I've got the tan here, and I'm going to come through now and put really solid little hits of what is basically working like a white for us in this. Which hopefully gives just accentuates that little sense of depth and space through here. So there we go. But just, the smallest things just keeps adding on and just keeps adding on, and before you know it, Mega City 1. Some crazy guy running around with a mask on, shouting, "I am the law." If you haven't seen the Carl Urban Judge Dredd, oh my goodness. If you don't know who Judge Dredd is, this might not make any sense, but it's a fantastic film. So these little dots here are lights on this little highway. Tiny little dots. Whee! Yeah, all right, that's fun. Linda says the Trudgy Cityscape. Oh, thank you, Linda. Okay, well, I think I'm going to wrap up today, just because I got to get this boy all settled in and get him to go in his bag. He's always good for that. He's pretty comfortable. But we've got a good start for our little sci-fi city, and all those little pieces of information are coming together. Hopefully it looks like buildings are coming out of the coming up in the distance, and so as you take that across from your basic beginnings, then it should start to tie everything together and make you notice that here's this dense environment that you're looking into. But you don't have to have this complex amount of paint or anything like that, or color to do that. You could just have this was an orange, we ran out. There's the tan, and there's the dark blue. That's it. That's all we've used on this piece of wood that was unprimed. So some of that texture of the board is coming through, and some of that tone of the board works for our benefit in this way. So it's almost like a free fourth color. And you can see the broken piece here. Well, it doesn't matter. We're just playing. But projects like this, ideas like this, is just something to sort of get you to understand depth and get you to understand application, and that you don't have to have an exuberant amount of things in order to imply far more sophistication to an image. You can just take your time and just think about, environments that you're aware of, New York City and things like that. You want to see some really solid examples, I would recommend looking at the Spider-Verse films. Absolute genius way for rendering cities, really are. And what it's about, and this is an interesting thing, and I'll just show you this before I go. In the Spider-Verse movies, they have a simple principle, and that is shapes, okay? So if this rectangular shape is here, you've got smaller rectangular shapes that make up the windows in buildings. Okay, and inside, and so you'll have panes that move of, the window frames that go across those. And so here's your first, there's your first shape, this large rectangular, this large square. And then here's all these smaller shapes, the second level of shapes, and it's just about the stacking of these. So that when we get down to what's inside the windows with these little symbolic chairs, and here's a lamppost, again, they're just smaller shapes. So you've got three, so it's just about stepping down, stepping down, stepping down, stepping down. And it's easier to do when you're working digitally or something like that because you can open up your screen. But this is not very different in the sense that we started with these large random shapes, of color and value. And then we just started putting smaller identifiable little shapes on top. And because of our ability as symbol recognizing creatures, we start to fill in the interesting details ourselves. We start to go, oh, well, those represent windows. That could be a smaller building in the foreground. That's another building. Maybe they got I don't know what that is, a ladder or a sign, like the lights along the big freeway here that wraps around. I got to put a big pylon across here, to have this, so that it implies that it's coming towards us. But we know that it has these supports that are spread out throughout it. So there's got to be a big one in front of us. It's that little consistency of the language, but you can do it by just breaking shapes down, so that some of them, like these squares in here, it really is, what is that, you as a viewer will fill in what that represents better than I could explain it. Because your experience of seeing images of big cities or being in big cities. Oh, I know what that is. That's like signage or awnings or vehicles, or we're looking down a piece of highway. I don't know, whatever it is. It's what you put into it. So that's ideally what we require of people that look at any of the images that we make, is that we hope that they invest their thoughts and their mind into it. So this says, love the streets, the street lights, and Linda says, interesting streetscape. Thanks, gang. Okay, well, that's it for me today. I'm going to go and get some stuff done. I'll take this fella to go to his appointment. So try this. Try stuff like that. It's not entirely dissimilar of mark making when we're doing portraits. Little spotches of value and those things working in combination for our eye to move around and see the depths and see the raised areas. This is a similar thing. We're trying to imply pushing buildings back one before the next, using a limited palette. But you can add more colors in, put some bright purples in the back buildings, and use some more oranges and the like in the foreground. Whatever it is, just play, have fun, and try different things. But don't be afraid of paint. Don't be afraid of color. It's your friend. Thank you, Chris. Loved the photo does evoke memories and emotions too, which I think is so neat. Oh, that's great. Glad to hear it, Liz. Okay, everybody, that's it for me today. I hope to see you on Monday morning probably. And in the meantime, I hope you have a great weekend. And everybody stay safe and go make something. Have some fun. Thanks very much to everybody coming in and joining the chat. Thanks, Liz. Thanks to Linda, moderator the mostest. And yeah, take care, gang. Thanks very much. Bye for now.